Now, Holy Thursday, you'll remember, or I trust you will remember the sort of delightful imagery of children going in to be fed, and they're like waves, they're like water, they're like flowers, they're like angels, and it's just delightful, isn't it? The old people who are taking care of them are kind, they're wise guardians of the poor. Nothing could be nicer. Well, let's look at the experience version of Holy Thursday. Same thing, but seen from a profoundly different point of view. Notice, how can we tell, even if we don't go very far into this poem, that it's a song of experience? Is this a holy thing to see in a rich and fruitful land? Babes reduced to misery, fed with a cold and usurious hand. What's the mark of punctuation? Question mark. How many question marks did we see in the world of innocence? None to speak of. Or if there were any, the answer was very easy to find. In one we did not read, little lamb, you know the lamb, little lamb who made thee, dost thou know who made thee, gave thee, and little lamb I'll tell thee, little lamb I'll tell thee, he is calling by thy name. The answer comes like that, or there's no question at all. In the world of experience, as I'm sure you're discovering, there are many more questions than there are answers. Isn't that the truth? And here, what does he want to know? Is this indeed a good scene? Why does he doubt it? Why does he say, is this a holy thing to see in a rich and fruitful land? England was probably the most powerful country in the Western world at the time this was written. It had basically, it was beginning to dominate the world. We were in the early stages of that expansion of British power, which would eventually result in what we know as the British Empire, and that would be a point where a little island about the size of Kansas in landmass would rule about 1/3 of the entire world. So that was only, but what does Blake say? Is this a holy thing to see in a rich and fruitful land? You notice we talk constant in this country, don't we, about we have the highest living standard, which we don't, by the way, but we say it anyway, the highest living standard in the world. We are the most prosperous country, the greatest economy in the world. Folks, 28% of the children in this country are raised below the poverty line. 80% of the people who retire in this country retire below the poverty line. The infant mortality statistics, the injuries resulting from bad working conditions, and the general health care quality of this country is about 17 in most of those in the country. Are we really rich, or do we just have a lot of rich people? There's a difference, isn't there? And what Blake wants to know is very similar, absolutely similar. He knows that Britain's a rich country and a powerful country, but if they're so rich and powerful, why we got this? What does he mean by this? You know, if you look at a whole bunch of orphans being brought into a place to be given a free lunch, you can focus on the free lunch, or you can focus on what? All those orphans. Why do we have so many orphans? And the only problem with the free lunch is, how often does it come? Once a year. When he says, babes reduced to misery, notice they weren't born into it, they were reduced to it. That is to say, when those in power have money and power and intend to keep it, what do they do to the rest? They reduce them to this stage of misery. And now they are fed with a cold and usurious hand. What does usurious mean? You know, the usury laws in Arkansas, for instance, used to be where you couldn't charge an exorbitant rate of interest. What Blake is suggesting here, at least when I say Blake, I'm really wrong, aren't I? Because what are these the expressions of, these poems at this point? The experienced state of mind. Not Blake, but the experienced state of mind. Now, which is a fallen state, and which is in many ways a dark state. He is fed with a cold and usurious hand. If usurious has to do with excess or exorbitant or outrageous interest, what is the interest that the children pay for this one free lunch? No home, no food. In other words, for one day of free lunch, the only interest they have to pay is 364 days of misery, no home, no parents, no life, no hope. That's a pretty expensive lunch, isn't it? I mean, that is not a free lunch exactly. So they are fed with this cold and usurious hand. Is that trembling cry a song? Can it be a song of joy? And so many children poor, it is a land of poverty. That's the reality. That's the reality. The condition of a people is to be judged, Samuel Johnson said, by the condition of its poorest people. Blake does basically that, and what he concludes is, we're not a rich country. We are a land of poverty. And their sun does never shine, and their fields are bleak and bare, and their ways are filled with thorns. It is eternal winter there. In the Songs of Experience, not only are we always in the darkness, but we're also not in the spring of the year. Where are we? In the winter. And we do not have that beautiful umbrella tree on the echoing green. What we've got are terrible thorns and bushes and all the rest of a very wintry, bleak landscape. And where the sun does shine and where the rain does fall, babe can never hunger there, nor poverty the mind appall. In essence, the experienced mind looks at this and sees it as a symptom, these children being fed, of the poverty, of the exploitation. Keep in mind that one of the things that was done to you if you were an orphan in the early 18th century, late 18th, early 19th century, this was for a long, long time. You would simply be sold, basically, into work as a chimney sweep. Keep in mind that coal fires and so forth were beginning to be a constant way of doing, industry and everything else. And a big old chimney meant to get rid of coal smoke will eventually get clogged up. But it's a narrow space. Big people can't get down in there. So if you were a chimney sweep, perhaps at the age of 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, you would be sold to someone who was a chimney sweep keeper, and they would let you down on a rope in a little chair, and you would spend your whole day cleaning the insides of the chimney and so on and so on. People who were employed as chimney sweeps generally went into those chimneys before daybreak. They came out after dark. They literally never saw the light. So when he talks about this is a land where there is really no sunshine, no spring. He's not just kidding. The life expectancy of those children who went into there was about 4 years. In other words, if they went in at 9, they might make it to 13, something like that. It was a very grim reality. And of course, it would not change for a long time. Child labor laws did not come into existence for a very, very long time. It would not be until the late 19th century that real child labor law was passed. And I'm afraid that in our country, we pride ourselves on not having that sort of thing. No, we don't. We just ship it abroad and have it, by some other poor bunch of children. But they're in China, or they're in Indonesia, or they're in Pakistan, or something. So it really doesn't matter. I'm afraid the human moral sense does not get a whole lot more developed as time goes by. It just finds more and more clever ways of avoiding responsibility. Blake, in a sense, won't let his country avoid responsibility.